Hello and welcome. This is Adam Thomas from Balancing Touch Reflexology. So good to see you, and thanks for joining me today. Today, I have a special guest today who's going to talk about a really amazing course that he's created, and I think it would be really useful for anybody to know about it, and anybody who's a reflexologist wanting to advance their skills. I think this would be a really great chance to check out this course. So, person on the screen here is, if you don't know him already, is Chris Shirley from the Pacific Institute of Reflexology. And he's also created the reflexologyresources.com, which is absolutely amazing. If you don't know about that, you need to go check it out because it's crazy good. So Chris, welcome. The course that you have created is Advanced Reflexology, creating a safe healing space. So I was just kind of interested in what kind of inspired you to create this course.
I don't know where to begin. There are so many aspects to this, and back in the day, before I got into reflexology, I took a program, postgraduate training in counseling psychology at the University of Victoria. And counseling was kind of my thing before I got into reflexology. And so communication was really quite important. And then at the same time as learning and establishing myself with reflexology, I got into a whole realm of energy management and psychic training that was really fascinating as well. It was really quite extensive. And I continued in that training to learn how to teach the skills. And at one point, I had a program called Getting Clear, which was where I was teaching the courses on how to manage your own energy and how to provide energy healing.
Oh.
So that's kind of in the distant background. Now, as I'm moving more into retirement, I have more time, and the whole area of mind-body connection kind of came up, and I decided to delve down into that. I've never really felt like I've had the time to do that. I found it useful in my practice with clients. Some clients greatly benefited from it, so I just wanted to get more into it. And then the ball started rolling. I got into trauma and a whole new area of working with trauma with Gabor Mate and Dr. Abigail, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Abigian. Two wonderful people working in the field of trauma. And gradually this came together that I realized that when a person is trained in reflexology, they don't learn anything about how to relate to their clients. And that's so important.
Yeah,
I
it's true.
suspect I've been guilty, of really not doing a very good job.
Right. So this course isn't really hands-on how to do reflexology. That's why it's an advanced course. It's more about, working with clients and how to create like the safe healing space, right? So
exactly. So we learn how to do the reflexology, but how to create a safe space for healing to take place when we're doing the reflexology, that is not taught.
No.
And that is all about communication. What's important. And communication, it's the essence of health. Internal communication, as well as external, our relationships with other people and everything in the world. In that sense, communication is very much about being holistic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And when I took training, we were more focused on, learning all the anatomy, physiology, all where all the points are and remembering all that stuff. So yeah, we don't once we start working with clients, we don't actually know how to work with them in certain ways, right? We know physically what buttons to push and all that, but yeah, when we're working with somebody, it's hard because we might be pushing other buttons, right? That might be triggering clients that we're not even aware of because we don't have that as our training. And I think this is where
Exactly.
what you're talking about here is that it sort of fits this hole in advanced reflexology.
You really touched on it there, Adam. We don't realize when we're triggering other people's buttons because their buttons are hidden. They're not obvious to us, and they're invisible. We have our own perspective, and we tend to think that everybody else sees the world the same way we do, but nobody does.
Yeah.
Nobody.
No.
We have a very unique way of seeing the world, and so do other people. So when we say something, or heaven forbid, give advice, we don't understand how that's being received.
Right.
We don't realize that we may be pushing that person's buttons and upsetting them more than we're helping them. Yeah.
So is in this course, is that a big component of it? Is learning how to see if you've triggered something, or how to listen, or like how do you go about working with this?
Well, this is what's so neat for me anyway, is that training that I had in terms of energy management is a really excellent way to develop mindfulness so that you have a much better awareness of yourself and how you're feeling and when you're having a reaction, so that you can manage that in such a way that that's not detrimental to the person you're working with, but also so that you can be more present, a lot more present to the person that you're working with. So the course starts off developing, and I want to emphasize this, the course is very much about training.
Okay.
So we spend most of our time doing exercises and learning where we don't do so well so that we can improve, giving each other feedback and so on, and becoming more aware initially of ourselves. Energy management is becoming aware of grounding, being centered, running your energy. There are a number of techniques that have a wide variety of benefits in terms of how you can use them, but they really help you to be more present. Once you're more present, then it's easier for you to listen to the person that you're working with and hear their perspective, even though it might rub you the wrong way, get you upset, push one of your buttons, because you don't want them to feel like what they're saying is bad or not okay. It's very important that they get the feeling that whatever's happening with them is okay, because it is. It's part of their process. We just need to be empathic about that and be there with them by listening, purely listening. But that's so easy to say and so difficult to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I've found in my practice too, like I'll see some great benefits, for example, in a client, and they come in, they're all kind of like, and then they leave, and they've changed so much, and that's what keeps me going as a reflexologist. But I notice that some of those people are the ones that sometimes end up not coming back, and it really frustrates me because they had such a great change, but I don't know, like maybe I didn't create a safe environment, and it was sort of more about like, oh, look what I did, like before and after, and who knows, right? But it's interesting that this course is sort of creating that, because I'm wondering if I was a bit more sensitive to that situation, that I would still have the client maybe come back to me. You know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean. I'd like to share with you, I just got an email from a client that I saw many years ago. And she said, what she shared with me was that she had pain in her lower back. I think it was around her coccyx. It wasn't typical lower back pain. It's something very specific. And she had a couple of sessions with me, and I fixed it. In her words, I fixed it.
Right.
And so she didn't come back. She didn't need to.
Ah.
And, for me, I would have had the reaction that you just had. Oh, maybe what I was doing wasn't good enough. Maybe there was something not right about how I approached her, and that's why she didn't come back. But she didn't come back simply because what I was doing worked so well. However, she was contacting me because a friend of hers had a similar problem now, and she lived in Australia, and could I refer her to a practitioner in Australia that would help her with her problem? So, in part, when people don't come back, it's for good reasons, quote unquote. They've had good results. But on other occasions, I think maybe unwittingly, we've touched on something that they're not comfortable with, or they don't feel recognized. It's like, no, that's not me. You're not getting it. You're not getting me.
Right.
And that's the thing about having the skill of listening, is it's very much oriented to you getting a much better sense of who that person is and where they're coming from. And in the process, they get to learn more about themselves, because you asking for clarity forces them to think more deeply about what it is that they're talking about, and to share that with you. And so the process goes on and on and on until they say, oh, this is stupid. And in a sense, they let go of the issue. So it's a healing process as well.
Right. Is this like if somebody takes this course? Like, is it good for beginners, or is it more experienced reflexologists, or anybody? Like, how does this information get incorporated into your reflexology session? Is it a separate kind of like, entity where you're kind of doing more of a counseling session, or are you integrating it in with reflexology, or all of the above?
I think that's really up to the practitioner and how they choose to utilize it. I'm not training you to be a trauma therapist.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. One of the important things about having mindfulness, being more aware, is knowing when you've reached your limit. When something that's happening you're not comfortable with, and it's like, at this point, it's really important for you to be able to say, I'm sorry, I don't feel like I can go any further with this. Maybe we can find somebody else who's trained to work with you therapeutically around this topic. So that's one of the advantages of learning to be more aware of yourself, so that you're more aware of your limitations and when they come up. I think when you're working with somebody, you're spending an hour with them in your session. So it would be important for the practitioner to establish their boundaries. It's like our session is 1 hour long, and this is when it starts and ends. And if you want to spend more time, then you need to book another appointment. But when we're working on a person's feet, we can also be having a conversation with them about where their stress is coming from. You know, a good question is, what drives you? What drives you? What do you mean, what drives me? Well, you're working 12 hours a day. You're trying to be a parent to your children. You've got this and this and this going on. What drives you?
Yeah.
You know? Because when we're driven, we're not present. We're just trying to get to the next step, and the next, and the next, and the next. You know, it's like, it's that list of things that we have to do each day and trying to get through it rather than being present to what we're doing in the moment. And that affects all our relationships, and that causes our stress.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, and you know, being a reflexologist, it's the ideal like situation where you have somebody there in front of you for like an hour, and you know, probably different than massage where they're totally zoned out and staring at the ground. You know, we can have an interaction if the client chooses to. And so it's really great to have, like what you're talking about, these extra tools to be able to go deeper if the client wants to. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And a couple of things come to mind as you're talking. One is we're touching the client. And what I discovered is that when you're touching the client, they feel a lot safer, a lot more secure. I went through a trauma therapy program with Dr. Amy Abijian. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing. It's always Dr. Amy on
I see. Yeah.
You know, the first week was learning ways to feel safe. Well, when we're touching the person, they feel safe. It's like if you hold a child's hand, they feel secure, they feel safe.
Yeah.
And people feel safe when they're being touched. But also, as we work with their feet, we discover where they have stress in the body. And we can then ask them simple questions like, are you aware of having a lot of stress in your life if the adrenal gland is very sensitive, you know, or this part of your body seems really stressed. Can you relate to that? Do you have any idea what that might be about? If they've been feeling pain, when did that start? What was happening in your life when it started? These are cues that we can, but the questions are open-ended. We're not providing solutions. We're opening the door for the client to look deeper into what the source of their stress might be.
Right.
And then they have the ability to resolve it in whatever way they decide is most suitable. Yeah. And I think that when we have that presence with our client and we go into those intimate places with our client, we build a very strong relationship. I think that client is going to be coming back much more than just having us do a Band-Aid on their stress, which reflexology, I'm sorry to say, to a large extent is. It takes away our anxiety, it takes away the pain in the short term without addressing how that got started and stopping it from coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Does that
interesting.
make sense?
Oh, yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. So I'm very excited about this, but I've been trying to communicate this through email. And in speaking conversation, when somebody is speaking, there are three parts to what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
There's the content, the words.
Right.
There's the nonverbal cues, my hand gestures, and there's the verbal cues. If I'm feeling kind of depressed,
Right.
or if I'm excited, or the way the person is saying what they're saying,
Hmm.
those add so much to the content of the words. And I put out emails about this course, and I'm feeling frustrated that I'm not getting across to people,
Mm.
the value of the course. They don't feel like they're seeing it.
Right.
Well, of course you can't see it in the written word, because the written word doesn't have the verbal or the nonverbal cues. And that's something that we learn about in the course,
Right.
is learning about those verbal and nonverbal cues. The problem with them is that they're unique to each individual. Their gender, different.
Mm.
Have different ways, and they're also culturally different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that means if we're not sure what the person means, we have to ask them to clarify. But that's a good thing, because as they clarify, they get clearer for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
When I teach my basic course, we learn about the intake interview.
Right.
Excuse me as I adjust my seating here. And the intake interview is your opportunity to establish your relationship with the client.
Hmm.
And so it's important for us to be aware of that.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing about verbal and nonverbal cues, yes, we want to be aware of them when we're listening to what the client is saying, but we also want to be aware of the nonverbal cues that we are putting out.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So if we're sitting there with my son just went for an interview for a job, and he said the guy was really stoic. He didn't say anything. He was like a statue. I couldn't get any sense of how he was receiving what I was saying. And if unconsciously that's the way we are with our clients, they're not going to feel very secure. He didn't feel secure in the interview,
Right.
and he's waiting for the results. But we want our clients to feel secure, so we need to let them know that we're hearing what they say, and we're taking it in.
Right. Yeah, and then also I notice with my clients as well. I do the intake as well, and that sort of thing. But it's sort of like there's kind of a very surface level, like, how are you doing today? Oh, fine. And it's like, okay, then why are you here? Like it's really interesting. So I think this course, what I'm hearing is it sort of goes beyond that of oh, I'm fine and all that. You're able to actually learn how to see and how to hear the deeper level of what's being said. Yeah, very interesting.
So part of the course is how to integrate this into your reflexology practice.
Right.
To know about the client, well, partly it's listening, but also you might want to know about their marital status or their economic situation, or how secure they feel in their job, or whether their job is just paying the rent, or if it's a career, or
Yeah.
People have many facets that we don't see.
Mm.
And so if we're going to be a holistic practitioner, we need to see those different facets of a person in order to help them. Well, it's a little bit tricky. We don't want to interpret and put them in a box.
Right.
We don't want it to be restricting, but we do want to get a handle on where they're coming from.
Hmm.
So that's where the listening is so important. So instead of giving them advice, we would ask them a question like, how do you think you can handle that? What do you think would be the best way to cope with that?
Right.
And see what they come up with. We can throw out some suggestions as possibilities, but not as advice, not like, well, I think you should do this.
Right.
You know, Carl Rogers was the creator of client-centered therapy and the whole skill of listening. And he was the hot man when I went through my counseling training. He really revolutionized the whole process of counseling, because before him, all the people in the field were medical. So their whole orientation was very medical. What's the problem?
Yeah.
Get a diagnosis, come up with a treatment, apply it, and fix them.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you don't do any of that. You have the client fix themselves. And that is so much in my way of thinking. We create our own problems, and we have the ability to resolve them if we so choose.
Right.
Yeah.
But we usually don't ask ourselves questions, right? Like what you've been sort of sharing this whole time is, asking an open-ended question really allows, because I don't ask myself those kind of questions during the day. I'm just like, like you mentioned before, it's like I'm in the traffic trying to avoid getting, avoiding getting into construction or into an accident, right? I'm just trying to get from A to B, and so you don't spend the time to ask questions. So
No, you don't. What I'm doing right now is thinking about a response to what you're saying, rather than listening to where you're coming from, which is the typical conversation.
Right.
What came to mind for me was I was once blown away by one of my clients. She came back for a second appointment. And one of the questions I asked a client when they come back is, how was your last session? And she was like Van der Zam. I don't know if you remember him. He was a British Columbia politician. He was a premier at one point, and he was
Bill,
fantastic. And that's exactly what she said. It was fantastic. And I was kind of surprised. Most people, it was good. It was okay. It was all right. I liked it. Yeah. But no, this was fantastic. So I sat down. I was in the waiting room. And I said to her, so what was fantastic about it? And she said, and this really blew my socks off. I'm glad I was sitting down. All those questions you asked me. Not my excellent reflexology, not my presence, nothing of what I was proud of, but the question. She said, I hadn't thought of any of that stuff before.
Yeah.
Now, this is not common. At least I don't think it's common.
No.
Usually you get those questions whenever you go for any kind of medical treatment, healing, massage, or Reiki, or anything. Health professionals ask those kind of questions. But it really illustrated to me how important questions are for people when they take them into areas that they haven't really examined too much in their lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I could talk forever about this stuff. It's so interesting to me.
Yeah, I'm afraid I could.
Well, it's good. You created a course about it, so that's really great.
Yeah, and that was exciting too, because in the process, I started out with the body-mind connection, and in the process, it became a therapy for myself. I took the Gabor Mate. He has a program of compassionate inquiry.
Okay.
And I took that program with him. And then with Amy, Dr. Amy, I took that program. I opened up things that I wasn't aware of before. I become aware that whenever I'm doing something, I kind of punch my shoulders, and there's like an intent to get it right and not make a mistake.
Oh.
But I was kind of protecting myself, and so I started learning to lower my shoulders, and as I did that, my front opened up.
Yeah.
And I realized how closed I had been, protecting myself in a way.
Yeah.
And this is probably childhood trauma that I'm working with. So it's not like when you identify for somebody something, it's suddenly miraculously taken away, but it does open up the possibility for them to be aware and conscious of that aspect of themselves and work with it if they so choose. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so great. Are you going to be teaching this in person? Is it online, or how have you sort of envisioned that you're teaching this?
I teach it. I plan to teach it through Zoom.
Yeah.
I plan to have recordings of each class. So it's 10 weekly sessions, one session a week for an evening. I haven't taught it yet, so I don't know how long the sessions will run.
Right.
Each one, but I'll play with that. But it'll be 10 weekly sessions, and there will be homework assignments between sessions. For example, be aware in conversations of nonverbal and verbal cues, and bring next week an example of something that you experience with verbal and nonverbal cues. And that just helps the student to become more aware of those cues. We're aware of them, but not consciously. And so the idea is for that homework assignment is to have it more conscious, so that as we move forward with our listening, we can build on it. So, yeah, between each class, there will be the opportunity to practice daily, hopefully, what we're learning in the class each week. And so it is a training.
Right.
It's not, yeah, it's a process of training. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're going to be there through Zoom, guiding and helping everybody out that way. That's great. Okay. So it's not just an online thing that you sign up for and you watch videos and you go on your way. So it's way more personal, interactive.
No, it will be in person, and I will be I'll have breakout rooms at times where students will practice things and then come back and discuss how it went. So it's active participation. Sometimes I'll have two students do an exercise with the other students watching, and then at the end of the exercise, the students can report how they experienced listening and speaking, and the other students that were watching, any observations that they had. Because often, as an observer, we see things that the participants aren't aware of. And so, again, that's all grist for the meal.
Yeah. Nice.
You know? Yeah. It's part of the learning process.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they can find out about this on your website. And this is on your, which one is it? It's on the Pacific Institute of Reflexology website, right?
Yeah, pacificreflexology.com.
Pacific Institute, okay.
So we've talked about becoming self-aware, and we've talked about listening, but I'm also in the process talking about the importance of hydration, breathing, very simple breathing,
right.
Being aware of boundaries. understanding emotions so that we're not freaked by them and we can be with them comfortably. The applied holistic practice, so seeing a person as a whole in their relationships and so on. Of course, the mind-body connection and the nature of trauma and stress. These are all sort of intertwined into the process of learning.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there...
So
Yeah, sorry.
it's good.
Okay. I was wondering if there's like prerequisites for this course.
Well, it's designed for reflexologists.
Right.
I'm thinking the course would be great for anybody in the healthcare professions.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And so maybe at some point in the future, I will create a variety, a separate course but this course is particularly directed to practitioners of reflexology because we talk about relating to the feet and how they, connect with the person and so on.
Right.
So it's specifically focused on the practice of reflexology. That's my mission, is to move reflexology into mainstream and have it respected. Yeah.
Well, you've done a lot of that in your lifetime, for sure. At least that's what I've seen in my area.
Thank you.
Reflexology used to be nobody even knew what it was, right? And now it's everywhere, and it's because of people like you. Honestly,
I'm glad you said that because of people like me, not just me, but a lot of people.
Yep.
There are a lot of very wonderful people out there practicing reflexology, and it's such a blessing to be part of that community. Like-minded people. You don't choose to practice reflexology to make a lot of money,
Oh, really?
These are people who care.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, caring can be misleading. And, if you're very caring and you run to help a guy across the road because he's blind, he might bat you away and say, let me do it myself.
Yeah.
And your intention is good, but your caring is misplaced. And that, unfortunately, I think is the case with a lot of reflexologists that don't have any training in communication with their clients. So that's what this course is about, is raising awareness of how you're being. And the neat thing is that it raises your awareness of how you're being in all your relationships, in your family, with your spouse, with, with your friends, in your work, with other practitioners. It's applicable to all aspects of our being. I think that we've covered pretty much everything that I can think of off the top of my head. But there's a brief description on my website, and I'm open to phone calls or people emailing me if people have questions. It's really hard to anticipate the kinds of questions that people might have. So
yeah, totally.
If we haven't covered something that somebody's concerned about, by all means, contact me, and I'll be very happy to talk with them about it.
Okay.
I will listen.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, and then is that the best website to get a hold of you at?
Yeah, pacificreflexology.com. Yeah,
okay.
That's by far the best. And to find the course description, look under training.
Yeah.
And then under courses, and then under at the bottom of the page, it's the third advanced course that is offered.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And below the video or wherever, I'll put that information, a link in the description, right? So
the other thing, Adam, one last thing. I'm teaching this course for the first time, and I assess the value of the course as $895,
okay.
which I feel is a fair price. But because I'm teaching it for the first time, I'm giving a $300 discount.
Oh, okay.
So only $595 for the whole course. First time around, one-time offer.
Yeah.
And we'll see how it goes. So in exchange for the feedback of the participants.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when is this course slated to run?
March 18th.
March 18th. Okay. So thank you so much, Chris, for doing this interview with me. And now you guys know a little bit more about this amazing course. So if you're interested, all the details will be in the description below. Head on over to pacificreflexology.com and you go under training and scroll all the way to the bottom. It's the last one there. Advanced Reflexology, Creating a Healing Space is what the course is actually called. And like Chris said, if you're interested in learning more about it, you can email him or phone him, and he'd be happy to answer any questions about the course. Best of luck for this course, Chris, to run well, and thanks for watching today. This is Adam Thomas from Balancing Touch, and remember to keep those feet happy. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.